This is the Marxists at the Movies podcast.
Scene opens, white lights dim down low. The cinema whispers where truths can grow. From shadows deep and screens ignite, the proletariat comes alive tonight. Tonight, Marxists at the movies, bright and raw, breaking through the reels to rewrite the law. Workers of the world in every frame, changing the credits, rewriting the name.
All right, comrades, gather around. Welcome to Marxists at the Movies.
Hey there.
Now, hold on to your dialectical materialism for a sec, because tonight we're dropping the projector and turning up the volume for a special bonus drop. Marxists at the Music.
That's right. Yeah, forget the flickering images for now. Tonight, we're diving deep into a truly revolutionary soundscape.
And at the heart of this, well, this sonic and visual uprising is none other than the electrifying Jolin Tsai, often hailed, as the queen of C-pop.
Absolutely. But as you astutely pointed out when you sent over these fantastic sources, her work is so much more than just catchy tunes.
Totally. It feels like a complex cultural force, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Something that really warrants a closer look, a critical analysis through our lens.
Couldn't agree more. And this entire deep dive into the beat is all thanks to you, our listener. Seriously, your suggestion and the materials you provided were spot on.
You specifically flagged her 2018 album, Ugly Beauty, and even just a quick look at the analysis makes it crystal clear. This is absolutely not your run-of-the-mill pop fluff.
No, definitely not. So, before we really immerse ourselves in the sonic rebellion that is Ugly Beauty, let's maybe lay some groundwork by looking at the artist herself. Jolin Tsai has been, well, a dominant figure in C-pop for over 2 decades now.
Right. Her career stretches way back. We saw her burst onto the scene with early albums like 1019, Don't Stop, and Show Your Love in the late 90s and early 2000s. Those had more of a ballad-driven sound, didn't they? With some R&B and even hip-hop influences sprinkled in.
Exactly. But around the release of her Magic album in 2003, there was a really noticeable shift towards a much more dance-oriented musical direction. And that's a path she's largely continued on, really cementing her image as a dance pop icon.
Which brings us to Ugly Beauty, which dropped on December 26, 2018. This album felt like a real sea change in a lot of ways, didn't it?
Absolutely. Ugly Beauty is where she really synthesized a diverse palette of influences, seamlessly blending pop with reggae, electronic textures, and hip-hop rhythms. But beyond just the sonic landscape, the thematic territory she explored was particularly compelling.
Yeah, it wasn't just about earworms, was it? The album really delved into deconstructing traditional beauty standards and venturing into some pretty intricate inner psychological landscapes.
And it clearly struck a chord with a huge audience. Ugly Beauty wasn't just critically acclaimed, it was the highest-selling album in Taiwan in 2019, which is, a significant achievement.
And it wasn't just physical copies flying off the shelves, right? The digital numbers in China were reportedly record-shattering. It became the highest-selling digital album by any female artist from Hong Kong or Taiwan. That's a massive statement.
It truly speaks to her widespread appeal and the profound impact of the album. And the critical recognition was substantial, too. It practically swept the Golden Melody Awards, taking home Album of the Year for Ugly Beauty and Song of the Year for Wangsenli.
Which we will definitely be dissecting later. But it's fascinating to see how her musical identity has morphed over her career. From those early heartfelt ballads to fully embracing dance pop and incorporating elements as diverse as rock, reggae, disco, funk, hip-hop, and electronica. She's clearly not afraid to push boundaries and experiment.
Not at all. And it's also worth noting that in 2009, she actually co-founded her own company called Eternal, focusing on artist management and music production. That demonstrates a real entrepreneurial drive and a desire to maintain control over her artistic vision.
Definitely. And her Myself World Tour, which spanned over 2 years, was a colossal undertaking, drawing massive crowds and generating significant box office revenue. She's a true powerhouse performer on stage.
Beyond her musical endeavors, she even ventured into the literary world with a book called Living Slim, which also achieved considerable success. She really has her fingers in a lot of different creative pies, doesn't she?
Now, before we delve into the individual tracks, it feels crucial to understand the deeply resonant inspiration behind Womsley, that golden melody-winning song. It's intrinsically linked to the heartbreaking story of Ye Young Che, often referred to as Rose Boy, and the widespread societal conversation surrounding gender equality education that followed his tragic death. That context, I think, imbues the song with a profound and important layer of meaning.
Absolutely. It firmly roots the album in real-world struggles right from the outset. Okay, so with that backdrop in mind, let's dive headfirst into the sonic and lyrical landscape of Ugly Beauty. Track 1, Necessary Evil.
Wow, what an opening, right? There's absolutely no easing the listener in here.
No gentle introduction whatsoever. Necessary Evil just explodes out of the speakers. It immediately feels like it's laying down the album's central arguments, almost like a manifesto set to a beat.
Precisely, with this real sense of urgency. And you feel that in the production too, don't you? That stark, almost skeletal trap beat.
Totally. It's stripped down to its bare essentials, almost industrial in its sparseness, which forces you to really focus on what she's actually saying. There's, nowhere for the sonic elements to hide.
Exactly. That minimalism in the sound mirrors the lyrical vulnerability, wouldn't you say? And lyrically, wow, it's a potent declaration of self-acceptance, but with a really interesting twist.
It is. She's not just passively saying, okay, I have flaws. It's far more assertive than that.
Much more. She's actively arguing that these so-called negative sides aren't just things to be tolerated. They're essential, necessary even, for truly understanding ourselves.
That line. Which one really stuck with you?
For me, it's, I don't need to blame myself for being born with a negative side. I was actually born to study my darkness. That's a really radical stance, isn't it?
It truly is. It's not just about accepting your imperfections. It's about embracing them as tools for self-knowledge and growth. It's a direct subversion of that constant societal pressure to be perfect, productive, that relentless capitalist demand for constant self-optimization. She's giving value to the parts we're often told to suppress.
Exactly. She's embracing the seemingly unproductive, the parts of ourselves that don't necessarily contribute to the capitalist machine.
It completely flips the script on that relentless positivity pressure, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you think about how often we're bombarded with messages to just bury anything that isn't bright and shiny, as if those darker aspects are inherently failures.
Precisely. And what's so compelling is how she weaves her own personal experiences into this broader message, her own struggles with public scrutiny.
Absolutely, like the direct reference to the relentless criticism she's faced about her singing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When she sings, the bullying is cruel, the emotion is spreading, it'll stop once I stop looking. Even pain doesn't give me the power to linger. When I'm out of tune, I need to be self-deprecating. That's incredibly raw and vulnerable in the context of her very public persona.
Incredibly, she's taking that very public pain, those experiences of being constantly picked apart and reframing them. They become integral parts of understanding her whole self, imperfections and all. It's resilience forged through confrontation, not denial.
You nailed it. A really powerful opening statement. The analysis we looked at aptly called it an emotional manifesto. And I think that perfectly captures its essence. And then there's that deep, almost demonic whispering voice that intermittently merges with hers. It's this incredible auditory representation of integrating your inner critic, acknowledging those darker voices within.
Absolutely. It's like giving voice to the shadow self, not to be consumed by it, but to understand its presence.
Oh.
Okay, let's move on to track 2, Wumpsonly. We've already touched on the deeply moving inspiration behind it, but the song itself is such a powerful dedication.
It truly is. It's an ode to gender fluidity, to queerness, and a poignant mourning for the queer youth who have been lost, with that direct and important reference to Ye Young Che. And the blending of genres here is so interesting, that dreamy ballad aesthetic interwoven with modern R&B elements and those subtle, almost heartbeat-like rhythms pulsing underneath.
There's a real tenderness and vulnerability in the music, but as one analysis pointed out, there's also a very sharp cutting edge to it. Jolin's vocal delivery is so restrained, almost as if she's holding back an immense weight of emotion.
Exactly. It's soft in its delivery, but incredibly impactful in its message. Lines like, "You are you," or "You or she both are okay," are so direct and profoundly affirming. And then there's the most beautiful bloom is a counterattack. That's such a powerful and resonant message of resilience in the face of adversity.
It really resonates on both an intellectual level, challenging those rigid and often harmful gender binaries, but it also lands with this quiet sense of devastation, this feeling of remembrance and respect for those who have suffered. And the music video is so striking in its stark minimalism.
So incredibly stark. That cold, gray warehouse setting feels almost oppressive, like a space devoid of warmth and vibrancy.
It really amplifies that feeling of societal oppression, of forced conformity. The lines of dancers, so uniform in their movements, like societal judgment personified.
Like a silent firing squad of public opinion, all those eyes seemingly watching and scrutinizing. And then the visual contrast, Jolin in that incredibly bright yellow tracksuit against the sea of navy blue uniforms.
It's such a clear and powerful visual marker, isn't it? Queerness standing out against uniformity, the individual spirit pushing back against collective pressure, all conveyed so effectively through color and costume alone. It's brilliant visual storytelling.
And what really struck me about the video was the complete absence of lip syncing and the lack of a traditional narrative in the way we usually see in music videos. The entire story, the raw emotion, it's all conveyed through the choreography, through the deliberate use of space, watching the dancers move both together and in opposition to one another. It creates these incredibly potent visual metaphors of struggle, of resistance, and ultimately of resilience.
Right, and those final moments.
Yeah, those final moments of shared fatigue amongst the dancers that speaks volumes about the sheer endurance required to simply exist authentically in a world that often tries to erase you.
Absolutely. It's like a testament to the quiet strength it takes to simply be, okay, track 3, the title track, Ugly Beauty. This feels like the moment where the gloves really come off, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's the album's defiant mission statement, that stylish and unapologetic middle finger directly aimed at conventional beauty standards and the relentless policing of women's bodies and anyone who dares to step outside those narrow societal expectations.
And the sound here is so immediately distinct, that sharp electropop foundation layered with those edgy trap influences. One analysis we looked at so perfectly described it as runway music for the emotionally disobedient.
Huh. That's absolutely spot on. It's sleek, it's modern, but it's infused with this undeniable undercurrent of unease, of rebellion, of a refusal to conform.
The jagged, almost abrasive synth lines perfectly mirror that feeling of emotional disobedience, that refusal to smooth over the rough edges. It's sonic rebellion in its purest form. And lyrically, it just keeps hammering home those false binaries we've been discussing, ugly versus beautiful, right versus wrong.
It's all about navigating the constant public scrutiny, our own internalized self-judgment, and ultimately reclaiming shame, isn't it? Embracing those contradictions, questioning who even gets to dictate these arbitrary standards in the first place.
Exactly. Who gets to define what is acceptable, what is desirable? And that line, so fiercely defiant. If you can't see my beauty, then you must be blind.
Yeah, or I say I'm strange beautiful. It's not mere vanity. It's a powerful assertion of self-worth, a refusal to internalize the negative judgments of others. And the music video. Wow. It's described as this surrealist courtroom drama playing out inside her own mind, where she plays all the roles: judge, jury, defendant.
A really fascinating concept. It externalizes that internal battle, that self-scrutiny.
And some of those visuals described in the analysis, they're truly unforgettable, like the grotesque image of her being served as sushi.
Oh, God, yes. That visceral depiction of objectification, of being reduced to a consumable product for public consumption and judgment.
It's like a brutal visual representation of commodity fetishism, what do you say? People, especially women in the public eye, treated as objects whose value is determined by their marketability.
Absolutely. And then the denial of nourishing food, instead being presented with those vegetables spelling out necessary suffering.
Such a biting and darkly humorous commentary on the restrictive and often self-destructive practices we engage in to adhere to arbitrary beauty standards, to conform to imposed moral codes.
And the stark visual of the prison stripes emblazoned with guilty in bright red letters.
So literal, so visceral in its depiction of public shaming, of the punitive nature of deviating from the prescribed norms, especially for women who dare to step out of line.
It's brutalist in its symbolism, incredibly effective in its directness. That stark color palette, the unsettling imagery of the food, the cold, hard floors, the accusatory text. It all contributes to this feeling of a postmodern courtroom drama playing out within her own mind.
Yeah, it's about the constant surveillance and judgment leveled against femininity in the public sphere. Following Necessary Evil and Wombstonley, this track feels like the moment where she actively starts dismantling these oppressive structures by exposing and mocking their inherent hypocrisy, forcefully taking back her own narrative. And the lack of a definitive verdict in that internal courtroom, it really forces you to confront the question of internalized judgment.
Right. Are we often our own harshest critics, internalizing these external pressures and perpetuating the cycle of self-doubt and judgment? Okay, moving on to track 4, Karma. The tone shifts quite dramatically again here. Feels almost primal, doesn't it?
It does. A descent into something more raw, more fundamental, maybe even a little brutal. The analysis talks about her as the executioner of patriarchal delusion here, reimagining feminine rage as a kind of righteous equilibrium.
That's a powerful framing. And Jolon's visual presentation in the music video?
Torn white linens, creating that striking contrast between an almost angelic appearance and a sense of violation, of being wronged.
That powerful juxtaposition again, outer semblance of purity masking an inner turmoil. Absolutely. It feels almost mythic in its scope, primal in its intensity, and it completely inverts the traditional male gaze.
She's no longer presented as a passive object of desire here.
No, she embodies this almost ethereal figure who has been wronged and is now enacting a form of cosmic reckoning. And that chilling Nietzsche quote at the very beginning of the analysis about the savagery that lies beneath mildness perfectly sets the stage, hinting at the raw and untamed emotion that's about to erupt.
Right, the lyrics about understanding karma, about not disappointing her wishes. It feels less like personal revenge and more like a force of nature reasserting itself.
It really does feel like a restoration of balance, a forceful correction after what she presents as a kind of patriarchal delusion. After embracing her flaws, mourning injustice, and mocking societal standards, now she is karma itself, the active agent of retribution.
It's cathartic almost. Yeah, dismantling those traditional power structures through a sense of karmic justice, a natural rebalancing of the scales. Which brings us to track 5, the intensely powerful Lady in Red.
And this one feels like a potent intersection of ritual and reckoning, diving deep into, as one insightful analysis put it, tradition's blood-soaked heart. The music video is instantly arresting, isn't it? That opening shot, the seemingly innocuous traditional bridal photo, the vibrant red dress, the formal, almost forced smile, and then that text flashing, "You made it," as if this is the ultimate unquestionable achievement for a woman.
But that carefully constructed facade shatters almost immediately. That image of domestic bliss just completely crumbles. The abrupt cut to the pristine white bedroom, the ominous red shoes discarded on the floor, the pale white legs, and then the horrifying realization of the headless bride.
God, it's a truly shocking and disturbing image. And then the gradual, almost inexorable spread of bloodstains across the pristine white sheets, just an immediate and brutal assault on the senses. And then the screen is just completely engulfed in a wash of red.
And the scenes that follow are equally unsettling, aren't they? Women turning on each other in these archetypal traditional domestic spaces, bridal chambers, sterile kitchens, seemingly comfortable living rooms.
Suddenly, these spaces that are supposed to be sanctuaries become crime scenes. It's deeply unsettling, like the very foundations of domesticity have become sites of violence and destruction.
And what's really significant, I think, is the almost complete absence of men in these intensely violent sequences.
Right.
This isn't a simple portrayal of male on female violence.
No, it's far more nuanced and disturbing. It speaks to how patriarchal expectations, those rigid and often suffocating gender roles, can force women into conflict, into competition, even into self-destructive behaviors because of the immense pressure to conform to an unattainable ideal.
Exactly. It's like the anti-patriarchal theme taken to this almost surreal and extreme level. Women are expected to be happy, subservient, fulfilling these prescribed roles, while the very system they operate within metaphorically beheads them, strips them of their agency and individuality. The red here isn't just blood, it's danger, vengeance, a complete inversion of purity.
And that stark, almost monochromatic white and red color scheme so powerfully reinforces that pervasive blood motif, a complete and utter subversion of the romanticized and often sanitized imagery associated with weddings and bridal traditions. It feels less like a conventional horror narrative and more like a visceral cultural exorcism, a violent purging of these deeply ingrained and suffocating roles. Where mere survival isn't enough, there has to be a brutal, even destructive break to achieve any semblance of freedom.
Yeah, okay. Wow. After that intense and unsettling exploration, we transition to track 6, Sweet Guilty Pleasure.
And the music video for this one takes a sharp and rather unexpected turn into the realm of pure surrealism, doesn't it?
Absolutely. A romantic drama unfolding with a dolphin as a central figure, complete with pregnancy and the eventual arrival of a half-human, half-dolphin baby.
Yeah.
It's intentionally, almost aggressively absurd.
Yeah, it's like a bizarre fever dream set to a catchy beat. But the analysis we looked at points out that beneath the surface of this apparent silliness lies a really sharp and pointed critique of purity culture, the often hypocritical nature of media moralism, and the restrictive confines of heteronormativity. And those fake, often judgmental influencer comments that pop up throughout the video really drive that satirical edge home.
Exactly. It's mocking how society so readily judges and reacts with outrage to anything that falls outside those incredibly narrow and often arbitrarily defined norms. Okay, track 7, Romance. This one starts off with a deceptively sweet and almost formulaic sound.
It does. It lulls you into a sense of traditional romantic expectation. But there's a very deliberate and quite brutal bait and switch happening here, isn't there?
Totally. The music initially promises this transformative, almost fairy tale-like romance, but the lyrics and the overall message of the song ultimately reveal the systemic failure of that very kind of love within the context of capitalism and deeply entrenched patriarchal structures.
It's like the initial sweetness of the music acts as a mask, concealing this underlying sense of disillusionment and the harsh realities of modern relationships. And the emotional impact, as one analysis so accurately described it, is ultimately suffocating.
You initially find yourself rooting for the couple depicted in the music video, hoping for that classic romantic resolution. But ultimately, love doesn't rescue them. Instead, it seems to break them down. That sterile, almost clinical environment they inhabit, their increasingly desperate and ultimately failed attempts to connect, and then those two starkly empty chairs at the very end.
That final image is so bleak and so powerful in its simplicity. It speaks to a love that hasn't just failed on an individual level, but has been actively crushed by these larger systemic forces at play. Love becomes, in a sense, collateral damage in a world that prioritizes profit and perpetuates inequality.
And then just two chairs, empty, utterly devoid of any human presence. The final image is brutal in its starkness. The music never shifts its tone, which only makes the contrast with the bleak visual narrative even more devastating. Romance becomes a powerful critique of the systemic constraints placed upon love itself.
Yeah, it's like you can desperately desire transformation. You can pour all your energy into trying to heal and connect. But if you're operating within a societal structure that is fundamentally designed to punish deviation and perpetuate isolation, then even love can become collateral damage. This isn't a romantic tragedy in the traditional sense. It's more like a cold, hard autopsy of the very concept of transformative romance under these conditions.
The initial sweetness wasn't fake. It was simply devoured by the harsh realities of the system.
Wow. Okay, from that profound emptiness, we dive headfirst into track 8, the wonderfully chaotic Hubby. This is, well, it's definitely something else entirely, isn't it?
Pure chaos in a wedding dress is how one particularly insightful analysis described it, and I think that perfectly encapsulates its essence. It's hilarious, it's needy, it's deeply unsettling, all rolled into one gloriously over-the-top romantic satire.
The music video is this vibrant explosion of bubblegum colors, infused with this almost aggressively melodramatic glee, a clear parody of domesticity, even with some unexpected mythological elements playfully thrown into the mix.
It's a real and very pointed satire of the idealized perfect heterosexual romance that's constantly peddled by mainstream culture. But beneath that surface layer of seemingly lighthearted absurdity, there's this really interesting and surprisingly sharp commentary on romantic capitalism, the performance of gender roles, and the very idea of devotion as a kind of performative act.
And those lyrics, so intensely obsessive, comparing her love interest to exploding fireworks, employing these rather bizarre reptile metaphors. It's intentionally over the top and almost unhinged. But there's also this underlying current of sincerity, this exposed and almost desperate emotional hunger that's bred by those very romantic ideals she's simultaneously parroting.
Exactly. Despite all the deliberate chaos and comedic exaggeration, there's a raw and almost uncomfortable sincerity lurking beneath the surface of the parody. Hubby ultimately critiques the often unrealistic emotional hunger that is so often cultivated and exploited by romantic capitalism.
The desperation isn't mocked in a cruel way. It's laid bare for us to see. In a way, it's like drag masquerading as heartfelt devotion, and in its own bizarre way, it's kind of perfect in its messy honesty.
It really is. Okay, after that wonderfully dizzying and slightly unhinged detour, we arrive at track 9, Vulnerability. This marks a really stark and significant shift in the overall tone of the album.
Absolutely. A delicate and almost fragile piano ballad, it's stripped back to its barest essentials, raw and incredibly intimate, focusing on the immense pressure to constantly project an image of strength and perfection.
Lyrically, it's a brave exploration of emotional honesty, about having the courage to confess those deeply personal feelings of not being okay, of struggling beneath the surface. It feels almost like an act of rebellion in itself, a direct defiance of that constant societal demand to perform unwavering strength.
The arrangement is so quiet, so restrained, just her voice and the simple accompaniment of the piano. There's no attempt to be flashy or dramatic. It's just a very direct and almost painful admission of something deeply personal.
And the emotional impact is profound, precisely because of its understated nature. As one analysis so poignantly put it, it's the voice of someone quietly asking for permission to finally fall apart, gently devastating in its raw honesty.
It feels like the necessary collapse after the performative energy of romance and the chaotic satire of hubby. It strips away all the artifice and exposes the exhaustion that lies beneath the surface of constant performance. In a way, it feels like the album itself finally takes a deep breath here.
It really does. Okay, we're nearing the end of our journey with track 10, Life Sucks. The title pretty much lays out the thematic territory we're about to enter, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Brutally honest and bluntly depressed is probably the most accurate way to describe its emotional landscape. It's almost like apathy weaponized, a direct and unfiltered expression of disillusionment. And the music video is just as stark and deeply unsettling as the title suggests.
Yeah, those visuals are quite striking, aren't they? The knocked-out boxer lying defeated on the canvas, the stark outline of a body on the floor, people slumped over in those cheap plastic lawn chairs. It's a powerful depiction of isolation and despair.
And those overhead shots really emphasize that profound sense of disconnection, of individuals trapped in their own private struggles. The restrained, almost robotic choreography just confirms that sense of confinement.
Totally. This feeling of utter and complete severance, of individual suffering and isolation taken to its extreme. But then there's that subtle but incredibly important shift that occurs, almost imperceptible at first. The group slowly rising, walking away together in sync.
Yes, a gradual stirring of energy, a barely noticeable movement that slowly builds into that synchronized routine. This collective rising up, finding a shared strength in their common struggle. It's a powerful visual counterpoint to the initial feeling of utter isolation. It suggests that perhaps solidarity, finding connection with others who feel the same way, is the ultimate antidote to alienation. An uprising almost.
Not isolation as the final state, but connection and shared struggle as a potential pathway forward. A really powerful and ultimately hopeful message embedded within that starkness. And finally, we arrive at track 11, Honey Trap. Now, while the sources we delved into didn't provide an in-depth lyrical or musical analysis of this particular track, it's definitely worth noting that the music video for Honey Trap received a Golden Melody Award nomination, which speaks to its visual impact.
Absolutely. Even without a deep dive into its lyrical content, that nomination underscores the continued visual artistry that permeates the entire Ugly Beauty project.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ugly Beauty, released on December 26, 2018, it's clear that this is so much more than just a collection of pop songs, isn't it?
Undeniably. It truly functions as a powerful and multifaceted artistic manifesto. It's a bold and uncompromising challenge to conventional beauty standards, to traditional and often problematic romance narratives, to the pervasive hypocrisy that underpins so much of societal expectation.
And what's so remarkable about Jolin Tsai's artistic vision with this album is that she doesn't just passively observe these issues. She actively uses her music, her often provocative visuals, and her captivating performance to confront them head-on, to unapologetically embrace imperfection, and to ultimately offer a powerful sense of solidarity with anyone who has ever felt marginalized, judged, or unable to fit neatly into those restrictive societal boxes.
It really makes you think deeply, though, doesn't it? How do these powerful themes play out in our own lives? Where do we personally feel those relentless pressures to conform, to constantly present a flawless image to the world? And how do we navigate our own necessary evils, those darker aspects of ourselves that are so integral to our humanity?
Definitely something crucial to keep mulling over. That question of societal pressure versus individual authenticity.
Absolutely. For its fearless exploration of these vital themes, its innovative and often groundbreaking sonic landscape, and its ultimately powerful and resonant message of embracing the imperfect and finding strength in vulnerability, we are awarding Jolin Tsai's Ugly Beauty a full hammer and sickle rating of 5 out of 5.
This has been Marxists at the Movies.
See no white lights dim down low.
Thank you for listening to the Marxists at the Movies podcast.
Cinema whispers
Don't
where
forget to
truth
like
can
and comment.
grow. From shadows deep and screens ignite, the proletariat comes alive tonight. Tonight, Marxists at the movies, bright and raw, breaking through the reels to rewrite the law. Workers of the world in every frame, changing the credits, rewriting the name. Popcorn power and the working class dream. Each flickers with a revolutionary beam. The heroes rise from the factory floor, challenging the scripts and demanding more. Behind the velvet curtains lies the fight. Directors of destiny taking the light. The dialogue chimes with justice in stride. The proletariat walks where stars collide. Marxists at the movies, bright and raw, breaking through the reels to rewrite the law. Workers of the world in every frame, changing the credits, rewriting the name. Blockbusters topple in an epic embrace. Let the ruling class vanish.